Hello, everyone. Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. It is Friday. The weekend is very nearly here, and to celebrate that, I'm joined by James Benge for a slightly later than usual Inside Arsenal extra time. James, how you doing, mate? You good?
Yeah, good. Not my fault for once. How's the
No,
car?
it wasn't. Well, it wasn't my car. It was my wife's car, and unfortunately, it stayed in the garage for its MOT and service a little longer than expected, which meant that I had to do the school run yesterday, which forced this to be pushed back 24 hours. But let's make sure it was worth the wait. How was the week, mate? You had a good one?
Yeah, it's been a hectic one. A
Moved on
lot
well?
going on.
Well, you're back at the in-laws now for a bit, aren't you? Before the move.
Back at the in-laws for a month. They've been very kind, putting me up. Happily for them, I think they've got other stuff on. It means they don't have to deal with me too much. But yeah, I'm keeping busy as well. That Arsenal game kept me occupied. Been doing all sorts. Nuno
Interviewing
Tavares
Nuno
interview.
Tavares. I was going to say interviewing Nuno Tavares. How is the Portuguese magician?
Obviously, first thing you sort of say, "How's life in Rome?" And he's just like, what do you not miss about London weather? Don't know what he's talking about. It's been beautiful all week, but he seems really happy, really settled. Found a club that really value him. I think there's sort of been hard times, kind of pretty much since that Forest game. You remember in the that FA Cup third round tie where everything went wrong, especially for him. I think almost since then his career's been a bit on the back foot, and now he's really turned it around. He's doing great. Should be a Lazio player next season. That's not all officially ironed out yet, but he should be in a brilliant price for Lazio. It's a great deal for him, and he's doing fantastically. If you ever do get a chance to see him playing at the moment, it's like the Nuno Tavares you remember from the good days in an Arsenal shirt.
Yeah, he always had the attributes, didn't he? You could see you could see why like Arsenal were really keen to bring him over, and he had the athleticism, he had the quality, he had the speed. It was just the end product that was lacking. But looking at his assist numbers this season, you can see that he's got the end product now. I think what he's 8, is it 8 assists? He's leading the way in Serie A.
Leading Serie A. Yeah, they all came before sort of December, but
He's had a few injuries
even now,
recently, hasn't he?
yeah, he has. But the guys that were watching him against Milan last week, they were saying it reminds them of Javier Zanetti. That's how good he is, or how good he's playing. So it's really clicking for him. He's really happy. I know some people were even then like, "Oh, could you bring him back to Arsenal?" I don't think he's really a Mikel Arteta in 2025 left back, but Arteta values some chaos in that position. So who knows where the future might lead him?
I think the deal is like pretty much
Yeah,
done, though, isn't it? It's certainly at the time when I was speaking to people about that deal, it was like, yeah, it's gonna happen. It's so it's not that much, is it? It's like £8-10 million, something like that. So it's not
8
it's not
million
huge.
euros, I think.
Yeah, it's not huge.
He's just. My suspicion is he's just short on minutes, but he'll hit that, barring any late injury. And even if he doesn't, I think then Arsenal and Lazio would just sit around the negotiating table and kind of do that deal, really, because it's
I'm
fair.
sure Arsenal would quite like that number to go
I
up a little
know.
bit, because the season he's had, you could be the Lazio chairman, I remember saying they wouldn't sell him for about 75 million. He said a few
Yeah.
months ago or something like that, didn't he? So
And now Milan are being linked with him as a sort of successor for Theo Hernandez. And it's sort of interesting when you sort of talk to Nuno, you're saying, "Oh, I'm really happy, but who knows what the future holds." So yeah, you could even believe that Lazio get him in and flip him. But yeah, maybe Arsenal just sort of hope that he doesn't get the minutes, but it seems unlikely. I'd be pretty shocked if that doesn't all get finalised.
It's got the sort of echoes of a Mika Bierif sort of Mark II around it, hasn't it? Exactly the same. Go for relatively cheap, within 6 months sold on for decent money, and Arsenal get a bit of a sell on, but nothing spectacular.
Oh, you wish Arsenal had got a sell on for what he's doing at Monaco, don't you? God.
Yeah, it's not bad. 3 hat tricks in three. I think it's 3 hat tricks in 3 successive home games, isn't it? Something ridiculous. It's not doesn't help when you got no striker at Arsenal either when he's doing all that. But it is what it is. What did you make of the Champions League? Did you enjoy watching it this week?
Yeah, I missed Wednesday night's games. I was at Franz Ferdinand, which was also fantastic. But I thought that game on Tuesday night was phenomenally fun. I don't think we'll talk about it too much because I know you've kind of gone on about it a lot, and we've got to look ahead to Man United. It just felt like Arsenal haven't had a game in a while where every break could go their way. You know, the Lewis-Skelly red card, the absolute atrocious performance by especially PSV's goalkeeper, but right across the pitch, it was every lucky break, and that's really nice and good fun. And you earned that luck a bit as well. I thought Arsenal were really good.
Yeah, they were. They were really good. It was like you said, it was fun. I think we all needed that. I mean, because it's been a pretty difficult few weeks, and it's sort of coming to terms with the fact that the Premier League title's gone and no strikers, and everyone's just thinking, how the hell are we going to score a goal again, or how are we going to win a game again? And so you kind of just needed that to breathe a bit of life into this, because it's going to be a fairly long end to the season, certainly Premier League wise now, isn't it? You know, it's not like we've just got a few games to go. We've got still a big chunk of games to go, and you know, with the title, you know, beyond Arsenal, it hasn't been the nicest a couple of weeks. So it was good. And I thought they played really well. I mean, look, PSV were really, really poor, but I thought there was an intent about Arsenal. I think it was really interesting how many players they were getting into the box in that game. Yeah. It just felt very, very different to what we'd seen, you know, against Forest, against West Ham. Maybe that was because PSV had allowed it a little bit of how they set up, but you know, Arsenal flooded that box, and there was just always numbers in. There was 7 in the penalty area for the first goal. There was 6 for the second goal. You saw it time and time again in the second half. Even, you know, Odegaard's first, when the keeper spilled it, you know, he was there in the box to take advantage of that, and Declan Rice was there as well. You know, Arsenal were just flooding the box, and there was real intent to the way they played, and it kind of felt deliberate. I'm sure that must have been the message in the build up to the game. It was like, look, we're struggling. We need to find different ways to score goals. You need to get up and support and be there and cause some chaos in and around the penalty area. And I think it's going to be really interesting if they play like that, if we're going to see a really similar sort of performance. Because as bad as PSV are, or were, sorry, you know, this is Manchester United this coming Sunday, who again, when you sort of look at how they set up, and this, you know, I'm trying to word this nicely, but they are pretty rubbish. You know, they've not been great at all. And there's also just big, wide open spaces. It's what they do, isn't it? They leave wide open spaces for teams to exploit. And if Arsenal can take anything from that PSV game, it's putting them to the sword. And hopefully they can take that into Manchester United if they do create and leave the sort of space that PSV did.
100%. I think United, you have to say, are at real risk of sort of playing into Arsenal's hand. They have this sort of unique ability among teams to sort of bait a press that they can't play through. So often you see like the ball cycling into that right back position or that left back position, and United have no way out. No Dorgu as well this weekend, so no natural left wing back. So many, they've got, I mean, it's nothing like Arsenal in terms of focus in one position, but they've got so many injuries. May well end up rolling out Casemiro and Bruno Fernandes as the midfield. So as much as there's never sort of a great time to play Manchester United, because they're always a team that raises themselves for big opponents, I think this is good. And the worst thing for United is they're playing better and they don't look very good. But, you know, they didn't really have any cutting edge against Sociedad. They just had a good goal in one of their rare attacks. So I think this augurs well. And like you say, I think if you're really putting those numbers up, if you're getting Timber and Lewis-Skelly or White or Calafiori or whoever it might be, if they're pushing the wing back and they're dragging Garnacho and Xerxes with them, then United they don't have the sort of pace and dynamism to match Arsenal. And I thought that's where PSV fell apart as well, was they let themselves get in all these one-on-one duels with teams that were players that were quicker, stronger, better technically than them. And I think you can do that to Manchester United. I mean, it's United. Sometimes weird stuff happens, but I think this is a really well-suited game for them, for Arsenal.
Yeah, they pressed really well, Arsenal, as well, against PSV. So really did. PSV couldn't get out, really. And yeah, like you said, I think if Arsenal do that, if they play really, really similar, I think it was a really good result for Arsenal in Sociedad as well, you know, because that leaves that tie wide open. And obviously they've had a couple of days extra to prepare for the weekend as well.
Dead on their feet.
Yeah, they did.
I watched that whole game. Dead.
Yeah, and Amorim said afterwards that he doesn't think any of the injured players will be back for Sunday. And you've got to think, if there's a priority out of these next 2 games for United, whether it's Arsenal or the second leg against Sociedad, it's got to be the second leg against Sociedad, isn't it? Because, you know, that's how they can sort of rescue something from their season, is in the Europa League, where, you know, most people are looking at that, expecting United to potentially win that competition or certainly go deep into that competition. So Yeah, I thought that was a perfect result because it kind of left it on a knife edge, didn't it? You know, if United had kind of won by a couple of goals, they could have maybe eased up in the second leg. If they'd lost by a couple and everyone thought they might be out, similar. But this one, you know, they can't be. It's got to be full focus on Thursday night for them. So I think that's gonna work out really well. Let's quickly just bring up Mikel's obviously had his press conference a little bit earlier on this afternoon ahead of the game against United. Some interesting bits and pieces there. Obviously, I don't know if he's going to start. I doubt he'll start, but Chido Obi-Martin has started to get some minutes. He couldn't play on Thursday night because United didn't register him for the Europa League, but obviously he'll come back into the equation for this weekend. Xerxes scored. Højlund started last night. I would predict that's probably going to be the case again on Sunday, but you know, Chido's been getting minutes because of their injury situation.
And because their strikers are really bad.
And because their strikers
has to be said.
Barely scored a goal in a long, long time. I shouldn't say that ahead of Arsenal because they'll just get a hat-trick now. But it's interesting. Mikel was asked about Chido. I've got the quotes here on the screen. Here we go. Was asked about Chido leaving in the summer and how he felt, and also about the sort of why maybe him and Aidan Heaven had decided to leave. And it's what he said about Chido. He said, "I wasn't too involved in that decision. When a player decides the best outcome for him is to leave, there's not a lot you can do. It's very unfortunate because we want to keep our players from the academy and for them to be very successful with the first team. But in that case, with Chido and with Aidan, we weren't able to do that." On that sort of perception, maybe that Arteta hasn't trusted the youth, and you know, I think back to who was it, Raul Walters, and that sort of Amore Kota Dubry, and that sort of batch that came through, wasn't it? They weren't getting minutes, and then they left, and everyone said, "Oh, Arteta doesn't trust them," and they all think they've got to leave. So he was asked about that and whether the perception that there is no pathway here might have come into the equation, and he said, "I don't know what the perception is outside, but internally, no, the reality is very different because there are those players, Lewis-Skelly and Nwaneri, who are with us. I guarantee you that if there is a player that can help and impact the first team, they will be with us." Now, you've watched a lot of Chido. You were telling me before the game, before we started this this show, you were telling me you've watched basically every minute he's played so far this season. I haven't, I have to say. So what have you made of him, and what do you make of Arteta? Because there's a touch of regret there, isn't it? When he says it's unfortunate, you know, it feels like he kind of regrets the decision that Chido made, which is not surprised really. He might even be playing. I think he probably would have been playing for Arsenal now if it had stayed with the injury situation.
I suppose that the thing would be he would be playing for Arsenal right now, but the minute Kai Havertz was fit, and the minute that Arsenal got their new striker, and especially if Gabriel Jesus was, you know, I mean, I know there's been some weird circumstances, but if they were fit strikers, he wouldn't play. United have like every centre forward available to them, and they're just like his team, and we know this at the time, don't we? That they basically sat down and they said, "This is what the path looks like to starting at Arsenal. This is what the path looks like to starting at Man United, where Chido will be paid, we believe, quite a lot more money." Like, it's a natural decision, and you know, I don't think there's any sense judging Chido. He looks interesting. I thought it was really notable. The Fulham game, he came on and got a lot of shots quickly. But I think when you put him against high grade Premier League defenders, and you know, against Spurs, it was I can't quite remember who the Spurs backline was when I saw him in person, but it just felt like he had the height, but maybe not the strength yet, as is natural for any player his age, and he couldn't really impose himself on the game. The ball wasn't coming to him, and he wasn't necessarily making the runs that a veteran Premier League player would know how to make. He definitely has that ability to find positions in the box where the ball is going to break to him, and that's how he had a few shots against Fulham. But I think, you know, in terms of what would make you fear sort of Chido Obi's name coming up off on the substitutes bench, or Chido's name being in the starting 11, it's just narrative. It's just oh God, it'll be so embarrassing. He's not there yet. You would never expect him to be. But I think because of the hype that engulfed him when he was scoring 10 goals for the under-18s, I think that maybe just built a picture of Chido that Obi that isn't quite who he is at the highest level yet. You know, the ceiling is maybe there, but you have to, you know, it is very low floor right now as well. I mean, are you like? Would you be worried beyond that narrative thing if you saw Chido Obi's name come up? It's Man United, isn't it?
I totally don't want to tempt fate here. I absolutely don't want to tempt fate.
Yeah.
I just remember Marcus Rashford starting his first game as a
Exactly.
17, 18-year-old against Arsenal in that game when we'd just beaten Leicester 2-1. Danny Welbeck had scored that goal. It was like, oh, we're going to win the title. It's on. We're going to win the title. Going to United, injury ravaged, had to play all the kids. Seeing 17-year-old Marcus Rashford play and think we're going to gobble this lot up. And then bang, 2 goals later, Rashford makes his name and the title's over. That game still annoys the hell out of me. Honestly, it's up there with one of my worst moments as an Arsenal fan, that game.
It was just after the Watford game as well, wasn't it?
It was straight after the Welbeck goal. It was straight after the Leicester game. I'm sure it's the next game because it felt like we'd put ourselves in a chance to really win the title, and we left the Leicester game thinking we're going to win it, and then they went straight to Old Trafford against a basic Van Gaal's youth team and threw it away and lost in really typical rubbish latter years Wenger fashion. It was just so frustrating. So would I be concerned about it? No. I mean, look, you got talking about Gabriel and William Saliba. You know, why would I be concerned about a 17-year-old kid coming up against them? But it's that narrative factor that you talk about. You know, you've always got that in the back of your head, and clearly he does know where the goal is. That was obvious from his little cameo against Fulham. Like you said, he managed to get into the positions to have some shots, and you don't score the amount of goals he scored, even at youth level, if you can't finish. So yeah, my only fear would be that narrative of, oh, you know, I've seen this story too many times before. But I wouldn't be overly concerned. And I absolutely don't blame him for leaving either and for going to Man United. Each to their own. If you're a kid, you know, you're getting offered a hell of a lot of money to go elsewhere. If you do genuinely believe the pathway is clearer for you at another club, then fine. I've got no issues with him going. And I thought it was just interesting with I was going to call him Arsenal then, with Mikel Arteta. Then saying he wasn't too involved in that decision, because he definitely was kind of involved. He wasn't involved in Chido's decision, but he definitely tried to get Chido to stay. There was definitely discussions which Arteta had to try and convince him that this is the pathway here for you. And I suppose when he sort of that sort of second quote when he's talking about the perception maybe from some fans about the pathway, you know, people have asked me about Max Dowman and whether, you know, should we be worried about Max Dowman? And, you know, I'm worried about Max Dowman, but just because I know how competitive that market is, and I know exactly what every other top club in England is going to be saying to Dowman's parents and agents and everything like that at this point, or people who's kind of looking after him. I don't think he's actually technically allowed an agent yet. But so I'm worried.
I'm certain that isn't stopping anyone.
No, absolutely not. But I'm certainly worried about that, because, you know, anything can happen until he signs that first professional contract. You know, it's impossible to say he's definitely going to stay. But when people talk about the pathway, you know, why does Max Dowman look at Chido or Aiden Heaven getting straight into the United squad? Why does he need to look that far? He just has to look in front of him at Arsenal and see what's happening with Ethan and Myles, Lewis-Skelly, and, you know, what Arteta says there. If he thinks that they can help impact the first team, I absolutely believe they will be used. And I think Ethan and Myles are showing that.
Yeah, I mean, since Mikel Arteta's been appointed Arsenal manager, what bright young star that's actually gone on to be that has left Arsenal? You know, who are the best people to come through Hale End? How many of them have not ended up in the first team? I mean, I kind of asking you that to double check that I'm right. I don't. I know it's early days for even the people that were sort of coming through at 18 years old when Arteta joined in 2019. I know even there, you know, some things can change. But by and large, Arsenal and Arteta and Mertesacker and Edu, when he was there, have judged this about right, haven't they? The reality of being an elite club is you'll do well to get an academy prospect into your first team every 3-4 years. And Arsenal have had Smith Rowe, Nketiah, Joe Willock, all Saka, of course, all predominantly under Arteta, and now they've got Ethan and Myles. I mean, that's what you show to Max Dowman, and then you say to him, Max, who, you know, go and look at that Manchester United first team. Who there is an academy graduate? Best of my knowledge is none. I don't, because Rashford's obviously been booted out. I don't really think someone like Garnacho counts.
No, or Ahmad as well. They signed Ahmad for quite a bit of money, didn't they?
Yeah, he's about 30-40 million. Clearly money well spent on the basis of the last few months. But I don't really think there's a top team in England that in the last 5 years has done a better job of giving its academy players their chances. I mean, genuinely, out of the big six, none of them have. You have obviously Trent at Liverpool, and they use guys like Kwanzaa well, but I don't think you'd say that's been more impactful than Saka and Nwaneri, Smith Rowe was for a time, and Lewis-Skelly now. I mean, the level of trust that Arteta's putting in Lewis-Skelly, every sort of Arsenal game, I have to do a sort of quick piece for the website, and I do my predicted 11. And for weeks on end, I was like, yeah, Myles is doing great, but of course he's going to come out. Calafiori will come in, or even, this is a game for Zinchenko. He keeps picking Lewis-Skelly over this £42 million left back. That's the only criticism you would make of Chido Obi is if he thinks he's as good as he is, then he should be staying at the club that is going to be competing for Premier League titles for the next 3-4 years, and get into that team, not the team that's going to be competing to qualify for the Europa League at best in the years to come. Honestly, yeah, to me the Nwaneri and Lewis-Skelly issue has completely settled it. You cannot have this conversation about Arteta and trusting youth anymore at all.
Well, that's a good little segue into what we're going to talk about next. I spoke about this morning in my show, and talking about the possibility of Tuchel calling up both of them. I think there's different sort of. I think Lewis-Skelly's probably a given, just because there's no other left backs really. Lewis Hall's even out for the rest of the season now, so there's not too many other options. I think when you look at Ethan, there's England have got a lot of good attacking talent that they could potentially use over Ethan at this time. But I was saying, from a personal point of view, I kind of like it if they didn't get called up right now. I think Ethan's going to be. Well, I think they're both going to be in the World Cup squad. I'm sure they'll end up being in the World Cup squad, but I'm not sure there's absolutely a necessity, especially in Ethan's case, to do it right now. It's like maybe ease him a little bit. I got a lot of criticism in the comments. Some people supported me, but other people are like, "What are you talking about? That's so outdated. If he's good enough, play him. Get him in," which I can understand as well. But I was just like, does he really need this? Just he's not even played for the under-21s. So would it not be better just to move him up to the 21s and then move him into the first team? Mikel was asked about it in the presser today. He said I've got no idea when he was asked if he was going to be called up. He said, I've read and heard the noise around it. Thomas and his coaches will take that decision and we will support them. On whether it will be good for the pair of them at this stage, he says, knowing Thomas and his coaching staff and the environment they create in the England camp, I think it would be an incredible experience for them if that's the case, whenever it is. That's not my decision. How we manage them here is our control, but they will be coached by people that are super experienced, far more experienced than me. So what are your thoughts on those two potentially being named in this upcoming England squad? Do you think it's too early, or do you think sod it, throw them in, they're good enough?
Broadly, completely agree with you on MLS. I'm going to sort of think out loud on Nwaneri. I was just looking at left backs that England have called up in the last year or so. Obviously, Lewis Hall, as we say, out. Rico Lewis, not a left back, not frankly good enough for England based on how he's played of late. Luke Shaw, yeah, long term, but I don't think he's fit, is he? And Chilwell's only working his way back. So, the challenge for Tuchel is going to be coming up with kind of anyone else to play at left back. Really interested to see whether he does back four, back three, how that all works out. But if he's playing a back four, I think he has to call up Lewis-Skelly and probably start him. Ethan, I'll throw the names at you again. These are the people that have been called up in the last 12 months that you would say Ethan Nwaneri is competing with. Gibbs White, a certain Jude Bellingham, who is quite good. Gordon, Rogers, Bowen, Madueke, Foden. Obviously, we can part Saka for now. Eze, Grealish, Rashford. I don't know. I think right now Nwaneri's performing better than nearly all the names I've mentioned there. And a few of them are obviously going to be doubts anyway. They won't all make it. What I would like is maybe, especially because we can see that the minute load for Nwaneri is a challenge. Could you have him around the squad? And he doesn't, whether it's calling him up and he plays one game, or calling him up to the 21s, but he spends some time with the senior squad as well. I think something around that, because like you say, I think each in Nwaneri, you have to sort of, if you're Thomas Tuchel, you have to be thinking, probably going to be in my World Cup squad, or certainly going to be in contention. So I need to get him familiarised with the England camp as quickly as possible. By the way, I love like what Tuchel's doing about kind of setting this big pool of 55 and making sure people know that they're in it, and also making sure that kind of the guys that are on the fringes of it hear the news and really feel like, okay, I've not got long now to get my ticket to the World Cup. As I'm talking this through, I would take him in the squad, but maybe not kind of view him as a starter.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, to me, that sounds great from an Arsenal perspective. I think these guys, like Arteta said there, they'll learn a lot from Thomas Tuchel. It'll be really fun to see how to. I'm really excited to see these games and how Tuchel goes about setting up the 11 and everything like that. And I can really see how someone like Nwaneri, if he played more of the back three, could be an option to play one of those inside forward roles off Kane. Yeah, give him a go. But like you say, I know what you mean. And from an Arsenal perspective, what you wouldn't want is him to play 90 minutes against Albania and 90 minutes against the other team that England are playing. Any help on who's out there? Latvia. I mean, equally, you know.
I mean, they're both at home as well, so there's no travel involved. Yeah. They're both at home. They're not the toughest of fixtures, although Albania are a good team, an exciting team to watch. It's not so much the load, really, because if he goes to the under-21s, he'll probably play 90 minutes in both of those games for the under-21s. So I don't think it's necessarily the load. I think my fear is just a bit, is it a bit premature? I don't think it would phase him. I don't think it certainly wouldn't phase Lewis-Skelly. I think both of them will be fine dealing with it. So maybe I'm just being a bit overprotective with my Arsenal hat on when it comes to it. I mean, clearly they're both good enough. I mean, he listed those names who could potentially be in those attacking options. I mean, there's obviously going to be no Saka. I think Madueke's out as well at the moment, isn't he? He's not fit.
Yeah, I haven't heard his name for a while. Yeah,
no, I presumed he's injured, but maybe he's not.
You get players like Sancho as well who'll come into the equation.
But... Yeah. No, I wouldn't be. I would not be overly bothered at all. Well, I wouldn't even be bothered if he's in the squad. I'd be quite excited for him because you always want. It's nice to have Arsenal players involved in the England squad, especially as an Arsenal and England fan. But yeah, I think I'm probably just being a little bit overprotective when it comes to it. Do you think Arteta? And obviously, there he's saying, look, it'll be an incredible experience. Do you think he would be worried about it at all? Deep down, he's not going to say it publicly, but do you think maybe he may be a little bit worried about it? Especially that you think of Lewis-Skelly, he's been really in the headlines a lot recently.
Yeah,
not all from his own doing. He obviously had the Wolves thing, which blew up massively. That wasn't his fault. It was just a referee's fault that a huge amount of spotlight fell on him. That came on the back of the Haaland incident, which again, I don't think was really his fault and blew up way bigger than it should have been. And there was a lot of people, big influential people in the media who were pointing the finger at him. That spotlight's not going to go away if he's in the England squad. He's going to be thrust in front of the national guys in that first press conference at St George's Park. So suddenly he's going to be really in the spotlight. And it's going to feel like he's not been out of the spotlight for about 2 months. And it's not his fault, but he is getting a bit of a reputation, certainly with rival fans are beginning to think, you see it online. There's a bit of a thing against Lewis-Skelly at the moment. I mean, he should have been sent off in midweek, obviously. He got away with one. Absolutely. Let me just bring this up, actually. This is what, did you see what Mikel said about him? It was a bit of a, I thought it was quite, he was a bit of a warning, wasn't it? It was like, he needs to learn from this. He didn't really, it wasn't like he didn't really defend Myles at all. It was like, this is something you got to learn from. I mean, the word liability was in there, which I don't think was used saying that he's a liability, but it was more, that was in the incident in the game itself and the match action and stuff. But the word was in there and saying he's got to learn from it. We'll support him, but the line is really thin and he needs to understand that and stuff. So yeah, I mean, it just feels like he's not been out the spotlight for a long, long time. And going straight into the England squad at his age, potentially even starting because of the lack of options. Again, it's just like his head must be spinning at the moment. I know he's got very good support network around him. His mum's a really strong woman doing great things that she's doing. But his head must be a bit spinning at the moment, such as what's gone on recently.
And I do think Arteta makes a really strong, fair point there that he does need to learn from this because, He has been sent off. He was lucky then not to be sent off again. And even though that red card against Wolves is obviously not a red card, and even Howard Webb agrees with us. It's a accumulation of a lot of fouls, and we know some of that is a function of the way that Arsenal play and the way that any top team plays, and he's making sometimes quite smart fouls. We got to learn, and the ideal world is that next time, Mikel, you can't keep being in a position where you spend an hour on a yellow card, because he would have spent, what was it, about an hour on a yellow card in that Wolves game anyway. So there are things to learn. It's the exuberance and the irrationality of youth, and it's something that you can only learn by playing lots of games and getting minutes. But I think he needs to feel the spotlight and the focus on it. And taking it back to England as well, he would be a huge talking point. This is, we all know, pretty much England's problem position since Ashley Cole retired, and it was England's problem position before Ashley Cole came along. So there would be huge focus on Lewis-Skelly if he was starting for England, and it's a weak point in his game. Every teenager has weak points, but this is one that can really cost his team. So I liked what Arteta was saying there, that there wasn't quite the sort of excuses, and he wasn't saying, "Oh, well, he shouldn't have been sent off against Wolves" and all that. It's good. It's good to sort of not shy away from this just because he's 18 years old. I'm really, really impressed, and I don't doubt as well that Lewis-Skelly will be thinking the same thing. That he'll be talking to guys like Declan. And he's really, today I've been calling them all by their first names. I don't know these people. I'll be talking to people like Rice, Partey, Jorginho, and Gabriel, and learning when to step in and what triggers he needs for, this is when I can actually go and win the ball high up the pitch, not make the tactical foul. So yeah, it would be a lot of pressure on Lewis-Skelly, but ultimately I don't think England and Tuchel have a choice, and also no better coach to work with if you're a young defender, I think, than Thomas Tuchel.
Yeah. And the thing with Lewis-Skelly, he won't want to be dragged off after half an hour of games. That would have really hurt him in midweek, because he was having a lot of fun. Exactly, he was having a lot of fun out there. You could see that. It was a brilliant moment. The assist and the goal. Those two linking up for the goal for the second one. It was brilliant to see, and you could see how much fun they were having. So he'd have been gutted to be hauled off there. He would have understood it. But yeah, he won't want that to be happening too many times. Just quickly before we move on to the sort of second part, when we go to questions, Sunday, same team as PSV?
Yeah. No changes for me, because you can change everything in midweek. Are you gonna still go in midweek?
Yeah, I'm there. I'm with my dad. I'll probably be, me and him might be the only people there, judging by the ticket exchange. There's so many tickets available. It's going to be.
If you've ever wanted to go to an Arsenal game, this is the one.
Trust me, you can get tickets for this game. It's going to be very strange, because I was picking between that and Chelsea, because I was like, I'll do one of the games in the press box for goal, and then I'll go with my dad for the other. And I was like, well, it's Champions League, it's going to be tense drama. I'm going to choose that. I'll be in the stands with that one, and I'll go in the press box for Chelsea. And obviously it's worked out completely differently. It's going to be really strange. I wonder how many PSV fans are going to come, because I imagine they probably would have sold out their allocation before the game. I wonder if they're all going to come over for it. I mean, those
guys will have spent a lot of money on their flights.
Yeah. And so you're going to go out to Madrid?
I haven't had a conversation with my desk yet. I need to. I'd like to.
I'm going to go. I've had literally everyone on this channel has been telling me not to go because of my record of them.
Indeed, I'd rather you didn't.
Arsenal European games.
But if I see you, guys, if I see him at the airport, I'll go over to security and go, that guy's acting quite suspiciously. I think there's something in his bag.
Yeah.
We'll
that might be Arsenal's key to success in Madrid. It's to stop me going. People are saying, let's give him a tea time. Let's someone get him a tea time at Augusta. Or let's chip in and pay for him. It's like, I'll take that. If you want to chip in and get me a tea time at Augusta, I'll forgo Madrid. Who do you think is going to get through, by the way? I'm not going to ask who would you prefer, but who would you think get through? You think Real get through?
I think they're a little bit better. And they'll be so much better with Bellingham back in the team.
Some goal by Alvarez, that. Oof, absolute banger in that game. Right, let's move on to some questions. If I can bring them up. Here we go. So first of all, there's quite a few on this. I think the closer Saka gets to getting back, we're going to see more and more of this about sort of getting them back in the team. So Chad says, can we spend a second talking about the future with Saka and Nwaneri in the team? Could they both start, one on the left, one on the right? Phil says, hi Charles, this question is for you and Benge. What's the possibility both Saka and Ethan can play together in our attack? Would it be a good idea? It's something we're going to have to talk about as, the closer Bukai comes to getting back, because Ethan and what he's doing, making it very, very hard to be sort of left out of the team, isn't it? I mean, there is definitely a way you can get both of those players in the team. There's no doubt about it. Whether it works, we'll have to wait and see. It's not something to worry about, though, is it? At all. Like, what do we do? What do we do? And we've got to remember, Ethan is still 17 years old. He can't be playing all the time. It's good that Saka's going to come back, that we don't need to chuck loads of minutes into his legs. But I'm sure there's definitely a way they can play together. It's going to be a challenge for Arteta, but it must be a way.
If they were all fit for the trip to the Bernabeu or whichever leg of the Champions League.
Oh, I wish they were fit. Sorry, I'm just imagining they are now. You said that. I wish they were fit.
They might be. Unlikely. They're fully good to go fit. I mean, I would play Martinelli left, Saka right, and I would play Nwaneri through the middle. I'm not obsessed with it.
As 9?
Yeah.
Oh, would you?
100%. I don't see a better option if Trossard isn't quite able to do that position as he did in his first season. And I see value in Merino, but I don't necessarily think he'd, put him up against Antonio Rudiger, say. I'd like to maybe do something a bit more technical and a bit more false 9-y, a bit more coming into midfield. And I think that would ask a lot of Ethan out of possession. Can he and Ødegaard sort of marshal the press? But I think, if all the sort of non-Havertz and Jesus forwards were available, I think that's what I'd go for. Assuming form is what it is. So that's how I would get them in. I don't love the idea of either of them on the left at the moment. I think maybe that's something you kind of would want to have a pre-season to look at, whereas I think Nwaneri's qualities would translate quite nicely to giving Arsenal like a balance between a load of shots, someone that can help them keep possession and kind of have something that looks a bit like a midfield diamond on occasion, a bit like a box on occasions, and a bit also like a 4-3-3. Yeah, I really mean that. I'm not sort of, me, I don't go on the hype train and I try and always suppress things with young players, but it's a combination of how well Nwaneri's playing and how I don't think the other two would quite do the job at centre forward. That's what I'd do.
Mm-hmm. I thought Merino played well against PSV. I think he's growing into that position. I thought he played quite well against Nottingham Forest as well. To be honest, he took his goal nicely against PSV, but what he's doing with his back to goal, I think, is good. And I think he's really improving. The West Ham game was. I always thought that was going to be a difficult game for him coming off the back of what happened against Leicester. I always thought West Ham was going to be a tough one, but I think he's learned from that. I think he showed that against Forest. I thought he showed it again. Some really nice stuff with his back to goal, nice little flicks. Even in the Forest game, I think, was it the Ødegaard chance that was eventually offside? And I think, and it was Zinchenko went through, wasn't it? And I think that came from a little flick from Merino, and he's doing it, and he did that again for Ødegaard's second goal. So I think he's doing quite well. I'm not sure you can play Nwaneri as a 9 in the Bernabeu. I don't know. That's a big ask for a young kid. It's going to be really interesting, though, isn't it? I mean, certainly when you look ahead to next season, that's where for me it becomes really, really interesting. When Saka's fit, when Martinelli's fit, when this new striker's in, you've got Havertz back, you've got Ødegaard there, potentially you've got Zubimendi in midfield, and you've got Declan Rice. It's like it's a great position for Arteta to be in, and it's what we want, isn't it? Because you don't have to play everyone every single week, and you've got quality absolutely everywhere. But if there are games where you just want your best players on the pitch, it's like, how on earth do you fit them in? Really, I think the most likely option, especially if you're at home against one of the weaker teams, is just leave Rice on his own in front of the defence, or Zubimendi, and you have Ødegaard, Nwaneri in those two central 8 roles, Saka right, whoever's on the left, and whoever the striker is up front. But it's
he'll really fit. He could fit that left 8 role as well, couldn't he, Nwaneri? I mean, one of the things he's very good at is getting shots.
I feel Ødegaard fits that left 8 role. I think Odegaard fits that left 8 role better than Nwaneri would, just because of the quality of Nwaneri's shooting when he comes in on the right. I think you put that on the other side, you take away massive amount of his game. I'm not sure you do if you move over Odegaard to that side.
A bit, but that, if we're sort of thinking pure, Xhaka got loads of shots up from the left 8 role. And I think if it's always going to be like this, where the play really goes through the right-hand side, and that's where the attacks are built, and then you flip it late on, then I can see Nwaneri working quite well as the left 8 as well. But the fact that what I like about him is he gets in positions to take good shots. Well, he gets in positions to take shots. They're not actually very good shots, but young kid, it's good that you take shots. It's good you can manufacture your own, and then the next 2-3 years will be making sure that he takes good shots.
Wait, why doesn't he take good shots?
So he shoots well, but he's not taking good shots. It's a sort of like his XG per shot is.
Is this some weird data thing that you're going to throw at me now?
Weird data stuff. He's like way over he's got about 2.5 XG, 8 goals. Well, but the thing I find interesting about that is,
so he's taking good shots then. Surely he's taking good shots then. They're ultimately
they're
good shots because they're going in the goal.
Good shots, like as in he's not taking shots from good positions, but he's obviously shooting them brilliantly. And one thing that I always find is really interesting, and I don't have the time or the ability to work this out, is there is a spot, and we all know it with Ethan Nwaneri, like we know it with someone like Aubameyang. There is a spot where if you get them there and they're in rhythm, and the ball's sitting right for them, they just score way more. And he has that spot on the right corner of the box, and that's where a lot of his goals have come from. And I'm intrigued if there's something there. But either way, yeah. Basically, what I really like about Ethan at the moment is he's getting in shooting positions. I think what if I was a coach, I'd be saying is sort of, can we get you in better shooting positions, exploiting all your skills to get you that shot 5 yards inside the box, unmarked.
Well, he did that for the goal in midweek. I love that run to the near post. Brilliant finish as well on the run. Fantastic finish.
Xhaka-esque.
How is that Xhaka-esque?
There's Xhaka in left 8. Scored that goal all the time.
What, run into the near post and leathering into the top corner?
Yeah. That was very Granit Xhaka in his final season.
You got your Granit Xhaka glasses clouding your opinion.
Cutbacks on down the left flank. He thumps it in.
Right, let's move on. This was one from Max, who's talking about Rodrigo and how it says, every time I watch Real Madrid, I'm amazed at how consistently Rodrigo shows up in big games, despite being treated as third fiddle behind Vinny and Mbappe. I would take Rodrigo over both players in big UCL games. I would hate to lose Saliba, but in a scenario Saliba tells Arsenal this summer he won't extend his contract, how would you feel about a straight swap with Real Madrid for Rodrigo? Then goes on to talk about Rodrigo can be a big dog at Champions League title contending team. In addition to his talent and confidence, Arsenal need a player like him in a starting 11 who knows what it takes to compete for big trophies. You can't get that from Nico or Rafael Leao. I would imagine that pretty much everyone would want Rodrigo at Arsenal if he was available. I highly doubt he would be, because why he might be treated as third fiddle. I don't know who replaces Ancelotti if Ancelotti goes, but Ancelotti loves Rodrigo. Doesn't he? So if he stays, I can't imagine there's any way. But yeah, hypothetically speaking, if Saliba goes, would you take a swap? I suppose you probably would.
Am I losing Saliba either way?
What do you mean?
Is it a case of Saliba's going and you can have 150 million, 120 million?
Okay, yeah, let's do that. So if they offer you 130 million or a straight swap for Rodrigo, are you going 130 million?
Just about. If only because you have things like Rodrigo's natural position is Saka's natural position, and I'm sure you can play him on the left, maybe even as a centre forward, but it's just a bit more of an unknown.
Yeah.
And obviously, if it's a choice between sort of Saliba or Rodrigo, I'll take William Saliba. Thank you very much.
Yes, I would absolutely do that.
And I'm not really even like I'm not keen. If you ring up the phone and ask me that, and I'm the new Arsenal director of football, I'll sort of say no, bye, block this number. But yeah, I mean, I very much agree with the premise of Max's question. I think he's fantastic. He's outstanding. He's a character clearly you'd want in this Arsenal team as well, because the thing he and Bellingham have had to do so that Mbappe and Vinicius can play as a front two is really admirable. Like the work they do out of possession means you'd have absolutely no trouble kind of fitting Rodrigo in. You just sort of have to work on sort of how you jigger a team so that he's in the same position. He's in his best position while Saka is as well.
Yeah.
It felt like a little dream for a while, didn't it, that Arsenal might get him when Mbappe signed, but I can't see it happening.
No, I think 130 million or cash or Rodrigo. I think I'd probably go 130 million cash.
Yeah,
just because, like you said, right wingers Arsenal pretty stacked. They've got another young kid coming through in Nwaneri. He's in that role. So no, I would probably, thinking about it, probably go with the cash, because then you could spend that money on maybe 2 players elsewhere. But I love Rodrigo. I think he's fantastic, like you said, and like Max says, I think he's criminally underrated by some in terms of what he does. Brilliant goal again in midweek against Atletico, and really big game player Rodrigo as well. It really does step up. So yeah, fantastic player. Thanks for that question, Max. Let's move on to what Alex says here. Any discussion on the future of Arsenal's midfield that does not include Myles Lewis-Skelly is not a discussion worth having. He is better than anyone we could reasonably get for that left 8 role for next season. We just need 1-6 Zubimendi and maybe get Naipan if we can get him on the cheap. Our transfer focus should be up front, not the midfield, where we have 3 exceptionally talented youngsters, our club captain, and the league's best midfielder. Thoughts?
Yeah. Although you and I have discussed this a lot, and I think we have different views. I think when Myles Lewis-Skelly's playing this well at left back, you could absolutely have the exact same conversation about any discussion of the future of Arsenal's defence that doesn't include Myles Lewis-Skelly is not a discussion worth having. Given what we know Arteta likes from his left backs, I don't know that necessarily you can't have a long-term view of Lewis-Skelly as your option. Lewis-Skelly and Calafiori as your 2 main left backs. You know, you've got someone like Yuri and Timber who can also cover there.
Well, before you carry on, just quickly, there was a question this morning, because obviously the Joshua Kimmich links that have been going on for last week. Now it obviously looks like he's staying up behind, which is always going to happen. It was so blatant that was going to end in a contract renewal. But they was like, if Jorginho and Partey go and we're bringing in Zubimendi, do we need to bring in another experienced player like Kimmich would have been, or do we have enough to not have to focus on doing that? And I think this Alex is probably talking about, well, we don't really need to do that, because you can move Myles Lewis-Skelly in, and he can be an option in that role as well. So just to take that into account.
Okay. Yeah. I think you'd be all right then, wouldn't you? I wouldn't. I'd love to sort of sit down and sketch all this out and get my 25 and get my wage bill next to it. I think I wouldn't be averse then to sort of a Jorginho style signing alongside Zubimendi on a free that is kind of really coming with half an eye on his coaching badges, and you know he can come in and play a few good minutes. I mean, like I'm expecting Jorginho to go to Flamengo. If he wanted to stay, I think that would be absolutely fine for Arsenal.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to sort of, like, the thing we've learned from this season in the attack is you might as well use the 25 squad spaces you've got if you can. And guys like Lewis-Skelly and Nwaneri are great for almost being like cheap ballast in the squad, as well as fantastic young talent. So personally, you know, I would try to replace numerically Jorginho and Partey, but I think a sort of getting a Zubimendi and then getting a player of a Jorginho El Neni ilk, just to be a nice guy to have around the squad and to play in the Carabao Cup, and that you can trust in emergencies. I don't think that would be the worst idea. And then you've got to be ready for the idea that Myles Lewis-Skelly might just develop into England's best left back. You've got to give yourself that chance.
I think with the 6 options next season, obviously if Zubimendi signs, then you've also got Rice as basically a 6 option as well, because if Arsenal sign a new striker, then Kai Havertz can absolutely be the left 8 option, because they're going to have another striker playing up front. So if you need to move Rice back from that area to play as a 6 for a game, you can move Kai Havertz to play as that left 8 as well, or you could potentially do the Myles Lewis-Skelly thing. So I think they'll just about be all right, but I agree. That's why I kind of like the Kimmich stuff. Was, yes, the wages has been massive, but a free transfer, a player that experience would be would have been a good option to have. I would love if Jorginho just said, I'm going to stay one more year. I have to say, I think it would solve so many issues. I think he could still absolutely play another year at Arsenal. He wouldn't play that many minutes, but I think if called upon, he could absolutely do it, as he's shown this season.
I might go to next week's presser and ask Mikel about that, because it's quite interesting, isn't it? What the sort of future holds for Jorginho. Because he would be so valuable.
Yeah.
And he almost will be, because he's never quick enough anyway.
He's still such a good player. Even when he played against Forest, I was watching him and it's like, he's such a good player. He really, really is. One from Charles here. He says, hi, Charles James. I didn't write this myself, I promise. It says, if Arsenal were to sign an attacking player, in addition to a striker in the summer, who would you prefer between Kudus, Cunha and Eze, and why? Thanks.
Do you want
Can I answer this first?
Yeah.
I think I would sign Cunha. Despite his sending off was hilarious, by the way, the other day. It was very, very funny. I wouldn't be saying that if he was an Arsenal player. I'd be saying, "Oh, what have you done?" And he'd have to
sign Kudus.
He would have to get that from him. I really like Eze, I have to say, but there's something about Cunha. The more I watch him, the more I think he's a fantastic player. I really do. I love his ability to shoot from range. It's something that Arsenal lack in this squad. I think it's what makes Ethan stand out well, is he will take shots on. Cunha would take shots on. I think Cunha can play in different positions. You wouldn't be signing him as a 9. Obviously, sign another striker. I think out of those 3, he would be my choice. My only slight reservation is I think Arsenal do need a left winger in the summer, and Cunha's not really that. So maybe Kudus would sort of get the edge on him in that regard, because
you could make Cunha into a sort of left winger, couldn't you?
Yeah, and what do you think of Kudus? Kudus plays on the right a lot as well, doesn't he?
Yeah, Kudus would be my pick.
Would he? I just wish we could go back in time and sign Michael Elise. I said it at the time, and watching what he's done at Bayern this season, I always look at Elise and just think that was such a big opportunity. I don't even know if he would have wanted to come to Arsenal, especially if Bayern would knock him, but I think he would have.
That kid is world class.
I think he would have been so good. I said it at the time. I was so gutted when I thought he was going to go to Chelsea. Honestly, I was devastated. So I was actually kind of happy when he ended up at Bayern. But
yeah,
I think he would have been perfect for this team. So who would you would have gone for Kudus out of those 3?
Kudus, yeah, just about. Love all 3. Wouldn't particularly complain about all 3. I think you've kind of articulated the real value that Cunha would bring, especially. I think he's a fairly good approximation for Gabriel Jesus at his best as well. I think the challenge there is a lot of what he does really well is about being the best player on the team. He's so huge in getting play to flow through him. He's the one that's allowed to take bad shots. And it's just hard to know how that sort of player, the Jack Grealish on Aston Villa, adapts to being. Where would he be? He'd be the 3rd or 4th most important creator in the Arsenal 11, or 3rd most important creator in the Arsenal 11. I guess he'd also play left 8 a lot, and I don't really think that's just not Arteta's vision for a left 8. Another tricky, ball-dominant playmaker, a bit more dribbly than Ødegaard, but ultimately still about creation. I don't see that one being, he would be bottom of my lists in the best way possible. So yeah, Kudus, get shots up. Quite versatile, kind of play across the front. Like, you could play him striker, you could play him left, you could play him right, could probably even play him left 8 a bit as well. Yeah, be happy with any of them, but Kudus for me. And he doesn't even have to move, so I'm doing him a solid.
Right, we're up to 54 minutes now, so I'm going to rattle through these last 3 really, really quickly here. On Ass's question, says, don't you think Calafiori can be a better attacking option than Marino as he runs the runs he makes look like he's a better option in attack and eye for goal? He can take shots outside the box. I don't think so on this right now, just because I think what Marino's doing is very specific, back to the goal, linking stuff up, and I think he's learning it. I love what Calafiori does, but I think he's better when he's facing the goal and being able to make those runs. I'm not sure if you play him as a 9. I think you take away an awful lot of the chaos that he brings to the team. So no, for me, simple answer, no. I think Marino's a better option right now. Leave Calafiori where he is.
Yeah, you've answered that perfectly. Although I do think everyone in the Arsenal squad should be taking shooting classes with Ricardo Calafiori. Everyone.
That was such a good finish. Brilliant run as well. Fantastic ball. One from Steve says, "Hi guys, not so much of a question here, more of a PSA. There's absolutely tons of tickets going on the exchange for PSV next week. Yes, there's zero jeopardy, but seeing as it's almost impossible to get tickets for most of the season, it might be a good opportunity to get some seats and support the team in the flesh." Yeah, just wanted to include that because definitely, as we touched on it earlier, actually. But if you want to go to Arsenal and you always struggle to get tickets, this is your chance. Yes, the game's over, but it should be a fun night. I think there's definitely going to be goals. So, yeah, absolutely get your tickets for that one. Lastly, to wrap this one up, on the sporting director, Burley Gurley says, "Hi, Charles, and perhaps James." Obviously, wasn't sure if this was going to be extra time or not. Says, "Love the content as always, part of my daily routine. I wanted to ask about the possible appointment of Berta in the sporting director role. I'm not opposed to it. He seems experienced and has been successful been a successful outfit for a long time. Slight concern I have is he might be a bit super agent-led. Mendes, for instance. I was wondering if you had any thoughts or insight on this. The Durabtion Edu times were not great at all, so I would not want to return to that kind of business model. Cheers." First, well, in answer to that, I've not, and I don't know much about Berta, but I haven't heard that there's a big sort of super agent connection with him. And I hope that's not the case. I absolutely share what Burley Gurley's saying there in terms of that the early Edu times with the Durabtion, that was not a very fun time and not a very successful time in terms of transfer business done. And Arsenal moving away from that was one of the best things that they've did. So I would be concerned of that if it was going to happen again. But I don't think, from my limited knowledge so far of Berta, that is going to be the case. Tell me if I'm wrong on that. But also, what are your thoughts on potentially Andrea Berta becoming Arsenal's next sporting director?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of Mendes, I always thought the Durabtion stuff, as very worrying as it was, and I've got so many columns from football.london days that got me grief for what I was writing about Kia. I think to an extent that sort of reflected an organisation and a technical director in Edu that didn't really understand what they were doing. As in, they were naive, they were new, they were natural. And while Berta will be new to England, if he's the guy that gets the job, and we should say interview's still ongoing, he's obviously in the mix, but he's not got the job. He will come with a relatively strong sense of the Premier League because he's done business with so many clubs, and he's done great business. So it would be something to keep an eye on. But at the moment, I wouldn't say like it's a mark against him. I think to an extent, Atleti are always in a little bit more of a reactive position than a team like Arsenal would be. And in that position, he's gone and really strengthened that team, turned them into title contenders, when we have to remember, even though they're the third biggest team in Spain, the gap between them and the top two is huge. And look at some of the business he did, right the way down to Julian Alvarez, as I think he was one of the last signings that Berta made. I mean, left his team in a pretty good position. So I like it, and I like someone that can work with confident, loud figures who are used to getting what they want and have a very strong vision for how their team should play football. So
yeah, I think that's important.
Berta,
I think that's an important factor, what you said there, in terms of working, anyone who's worked alongside Simeone for that long and being able to handle it and stay in a role and being able to sort of compete and challenge with him, which I'm sure, there's no way those two guys agreed on everything the whole way through his tenure at the club. So there would have been big flashpoints and pretty heated ones, I imagine. And he managed to handle that well and stay in a job, and the pair of them, work together well enough to build that squad to stay competing. I think that's a really sort of plus point for him if he does, like you say, get it. At the moment, he hasn't got it. We're getting close to potentially having an answer on who's going to be it, and it looks like he's potentially the front runner right now. But certainly my understanding, no official offer has been made to him or anyone else yet. So we'll see what happens over the next week or so. But look, we're about to hit the hour mark, mate. I think this is a good time to call time on it. Thank you for watching, everyone. Thank you for listening. It's been a pleasure. We'll be back next week, probably after the PSV game, wouldn't it? It'll be on the Thursday. Yeah, I imagine next week. What are your plans this weekend?
It won't be on the Thursday. I'll tell you, it won't be on the Thursday. I'm going to the River Cafe, and then I'm going to watch Tottenham. So we'll do it on Friday.
Who are you watching on Thursday? Tottenham. Oh, yeah. It's the Europa League. Of course it is. It's they lost yesterday, didn't they? 1-0.
Yeah.
Bergwijn and goal.
Can't miss that.
Not making the journey to Old Trafford then?
No.
I am, unfortunately.
Too many journeys of late.
I am, unfortunately. I've never seen
Have you
Arsenal
checked the weather?
I've never seen Arsenal win at Old Trafford. I know.
Yeah, maybe don't.
the focus shouldn't be on stopping me going to Madrid. It should probably be on stopping me going to Old Trafford, to be fair. But I am going, so I'll be at that one. And so, yes, okay, we'll probably catch up this time next week then, Friday again.
Yeah.
So, yeah, cheers, everyone. Thanks for watching. I'll be back in the morning. So look out for that one. And, yeah, have a great weekend. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.